Good afternoon, everyone. It's Dan Sainsbury here, international healer and psychologist, bringing you today a webinar that I've called From Fear to Fearlessness, How to Pre-Engineer Success in All You Do. So just for the next 40 minutes or so, I'm going to ask you just please to turn off all your distractions, mobile phones, close all other tabs on your computer. You'll need to focus and concentrate. There's a lot of valuable new information here about how to remove fear from your life, but then how to manifest that which you most want in your life. Now, if you do have any questions, please leave them at the end, and I'll give you an email address you can send them to if you do have any questions. Please feel free to take lots of notes, and if you miss something, again, let me know via email. I will be making an offer to you at the end, which will inordinately help an area of your life, if not your whole life. So what we're going to be covering today, first of all, how fear is a massive illusion, how it's a grand deception, and how it is entirely unnecessary. I'll also be covering how the presence of fear in the self gives us what I refer to as a prison perception. So it gives us a particular lens through which we look at a situation or the world generally. So fear is very limiting in its ability to allow us to see anything. But fearlessness gives us a completely different lens altogether, which is a much wider, expanded vision. What we then be covering is how we know that fear is false, and how we know it's erroneous, how it's misleading. I call it a false prophet. So it attempts to predict what's going to happen, but largely it's very inaccurate. But more than that, how it impairs performance and our vision of what is possible for us. What we'll then be moving on to is how you actually clear fear. I'm going to give you a technique which you can use immediately, which will clear fear, bring it down from however strong it is out of 10 to sometimes 3 to 1, 0. And when we bring fear right down, in doing so, we reveal it to be nothing more than an illusory mist, very similar to morning mist that's clearing off a lake as the sun rises. On from there, I'm going to be teaching you how to manifest best outcomes and resolutions for upcoming events that you have or ongoing conflicts and situations. So we all have key challenges in our life, and we all look at those challenges from our traditional lens or traditional level of consciousness. But I'm going to be teaching you how to see it from an elevated state of awareness, so you can see more possibility, and you can actually see the optimum or ideal with every situation we're involved in, and then make it happen. This is a very ethereal technique or esoteric technique, and I'll share with you how I know it. So first of all, we're going to be looking at fear as the grand deceiver. So for me, fear is essentially a very highly convincing smoke and mirrors act that weaves its mist both subtly and grossly in your life. How many times, for example, have you had fear about an upcoming event or situation for the events to go just fine? The most obvious example is of a job interview or exam or even date or social function. Maybe you've been petrified on the lead up to it. I remember a time when I was about 22, 23 years old. I was walking to my final ever exam at university. All those years of A-levels and then 4 years at university and all those exams, and the very final one in my 4th year, I had about 10 days to prepare for it just by virtue of the way my exam timetable landed. I had like 10 days before my very final one, and it was one of my easiest papers. And yet, on the way there, I was frozen with anxiety. I had so much anxiety flooding my body, even though logically I had no reason. I knew the paper pretty well. We had enough time to prepare. It's going to be my final level exam, and yet that anxiety is very high. So I knew it was completely inconsistent or not aligned with the severity of the paper. So I could already tell it was ridiculous. But back then, what's that, 17 years ago or whatever, I didn't have a technique, and how I wish I knew now what I know now. So how many times have you had fear or anxiety of such a high degree, and then the thing has just gone fine? So that's what I mean by false prophecy. So how many times have you thought, oh, what a waste of time to have those 2 weeks or even 2 hours leading up to the event ruined? A false prophet masquerading as real, but totally not, all made up. You can probably think of hundreds of times that's been the case for you. So as I say, there's 3 key ways I know that fear or these kind of challenging, weakening emotions are largely, if not fully, total waste of time. So first of all, we've got the false prophet, this idea of fear of something coming up, but then it goes just fine. So inaccurate. So what is a false prophet, and certainly no prophet when you buy into it. It's also relative and not universal. So what I mean by that is, let's say 1 million people are walking to an exam in that exact same way. There's going to be a whole scale and spectrum of response, internal response to that exam paper between person 1 and person 1 million. And if you put them in order of severity from feeling zero fear and just total excitement, this exam paper, you just want to get it done and get a very high percentage, to that person number 1 million, where he can't even make the exam because he's so sick because of fear. There's 1 million shades of response, a continuum of response, and therefore which one is real? None. If none, if all exist, then which is true? If there's a selection of truth, then for me none are true. Truth is true, and therefore that emotion is not true. In the authentic sense, it might feel real, but it's not true. So if it's relative and not universal, and not everyone has that fear, that level of fear for that precise event, therefore there must be malleability, there must be fluidity, there must be choice of how we can respond. We can respond better. Now it's also relative into yourself as well. So maybe that day you'd have felt very high anxiety because you maybe had too much coffee. Or maybe another day you'd watch that same exam and you don't really care because you've received some other news which is either good or bad. So it kind of knocks the response a little bit. But either which way, the conditionality aspect and the non-universality aspect gives us, what we can call wiggle room. We've got room to maneuver. And then the third part is that fear and similar emotions are impermanent and shifting. So when we have it, it feels like, oh no, it's going to be there for such a long time. It's not. It's there for 1 minute, it's gone the next. So walking to that exam, same example. That anxiety may not be 10 out of 10 every single millisecond you're walking there. It might come down a bit. You might be thinking about something else. So again, that impermanency and shifting quality about it, again, alludes to the idea we can shift out of these, let's say, in a conscious or manual way. And we're going to be talking about how to do that in a little while. The problem with fear, of course, that the more we have it, the more our visionary field, so the way we perceive, narrows. And we look at what I call WCS, or worst case scenario. That's just the nature of the ego mind. So when we have massive fear, it narrows our vision. When we have no fear, we have very wide vision. We see the full panoply of possibilities. We become a magnet to happiness, success, bright people, best outcomes. Our light, which is always there behind the clouds of fear, is the healer of the situation, even of the person you're with, and the attractor to these wonderful experiences. Also, when we have no fear, our full gifts and talents are able to pour forth naturally and spontaneously. We are, in the colloquial terms, at our best. We're fully able to feel and realize our divine or higher potential. So really, in general terms, when there's no fear, there is love. You've heard that wonderful spiritual adage, perfect love casts out all fear. And fear and love cannot exist simultaneously. And you know which one you prefer to feel. So by now, are you convinced we do not need fear? Or do you feel we do need it sometimes? So let's move on now to how to clear it. There's loads of ways to do it, but I'm going to share with you. So I'm not naturally a religious person. I'm a psychologist, and I do have a natural healing ability, but I come from a non-religious I come from very scientific, not that there should be a divide between the two, background. So my nature is one of empiricism. So I just want results. I want the best results in myself and, of course, in my clients. So this technique sounds religious. It's not. I'd call it more spiritual or divine. So a bit of background here. As I say, I want the best possible tools and techniques that's going to help you. This is the best technique I know to clear fear. So God, we can also call divine source or our divine source. So we are not limited by our bodies or our minds with a small m. If you think we're here just in this temporary body for whatever temporary lifespan we have, I struggle with that idea. I think there's more. And this begs the whole question, what are we here for? Why are we here? What are we supposed to be doing here? And so you might have a sense of spirituality and divinity. So just try it on anyway. Even if you're atheist, just try this phrase and to see what happens. Because as an atheist, you're definitely an empiricist or a scientist, and you measure things by results, by your experience, okay? So this is how you clear fear. Notice the fear right now simply as a feeling in the body. Give it a grade out of 10. Remember that number. Okay, so now just bring your awareness back to the feeling of fear now and say to it, God is shining his divine light into this now. Okay, just notice what happened. Notice what level the fear is now between 0 and 10. And again, just bring your awareness to it as a feeling in the body, no more than the feeling. And then say to that feeling, God is shining his perfect divine light into this now. And again, just notice and appraise what's happened. Notice to see if that fear's come down. Now, it pretty much always comes down. So you can keep using that until it's come down to 0. And now what do you notice, not just about the fear itself, but how do you feel now? Do you feel more relaxed? Do you feel more vibrant? Do you feel more optimistic? So just notice how you feel when the fear comes down the body in terms of your outlook, your health, your relaxation. So many different advantages to clearing fear. So now I'm going to be teaching you a very beautiful golden technique, which allows you to, once you've moved beyond the fear, then you can start to work on what you want in life. How often do we spend so much time trying to avoid what we don't want? One could argue that the brain, whilst it's highly useful, only is interested in keeping you alive. It's a survival organ. There are aspects to it which are more, of course, more about vision and strategy and success, but those have to be kind of activated and switched on a lot more. That's part of the prefrontal cortex. The bulk of the brain is about survival. So many neuroscientists are now becoming performance coaches because they understand the mind and the brain so well. And most of them would say that the brain is perfect, but for 10,000 years ago. So now it's a question of having to reprogram it, to actually start to run it a bit more, to start to roll the roost a bit more. So you're going to be governed by survival, which is predicated upon fear, or are you governed by moving towards what you most want? So I'm going to be teaching now how to understand, first of all, what you most want, because that sometimes is not clear, but then how to make that happen. So this technique came to me during a client session. I was in London visiting a client about 4 years. Well, I live in London, but I was visiting a client here about 4 years ago. And she opened the door. She didn't look very well at all. But we didn't focus on her health. For about an hour and a half, we focused on a complete separate issue, which is an issue with a relationship with her mother-in-law. And we did all the healing around there, the clearing work, and she felt great afterwards. And at the end, she goes, Dan, can we work on something else? Do we have time? I was like, yes, of course. And she said, you might have noticed I don't look very well right now. I said, yes, I did notice that. She goes, well, I have a very young daughter who's very beautiful, but she doesn't let me sleep. So we take her to bed at 8 in the evening, and then we go to bed at 10:30. But she hears us go to bed and she gets in bed with us. And then she wakes up again at 1:30. She's back in her own room and she's back and forth all night, and it just completely wrecks my sleep. So this woman's basically said, look, she hasn't slept in 3.5 years. And she basically said to me, Dan, can you do something? Can you do something for my daughter? And of course, as often as the case, you never get to learn how to specifically deal with these things in your training. But something came through me, and I was in healing mode. I was just focused on helping this woman, and some wisdom came through. And she said, can you help? And I said, yes. I just convinced, I knew I could. Yes, I can help. And so I basically said to her, okay, what is it you want to happen? And she goes, well, obviously I want her to go to bed at 8, 8:30, whatever it was. And I want her to stay there. And of course, sleep well till 6:30 in the morning. What then happened was I suddenly saw that happening in my vision. I could feel the vision above me. I saw the girl going to bed at 8:30 and staying there till 6:30 in the morning. And I just saw it happening. And I was convinced of it. I had no fear, no doubt, no concern. And it kind of, the vision was almost in light, had a kind of divine light aspect to it. So I asked her to join me. I said, let's just see that happening. See her going to bed at 8:30 and say her staying there. And it's done deal, done. No fear. Anyway, a week later, I had a text message from her saying, Dan, you never guess what? Ever since that day you came, she's slept perfectly. She's stayed in bed. So this is where the techniques come from. So what is the technique exactly? So let's take any aspect of your life, be it wealth, be it health, be it relationships, be it career, anything you want to focus on, anything you want to kind of optimize or get a great result in. Maybe you've got an event coming up or situation, anything you want an optimum result. So the way I do it is first we do it as a question. So you ask yourself, okay, what's the very best thing that can possibly happen regarding ... whatever you want to work on. Let the answer come to you. Okay, so that's step one. So don't read the rest of the slide just now. Just stay with that first question. Write that question down. What's the very best thing that can possibly happen regarding ... Ask that question a few times because you'll get better and better answers, clearer and clearer answers. Then, perhaps when you've asked it 2 or 3 times, then say to the answer, God is shining his perfect divine light into this now. So your first step is seeing the vision, seeing not just the vision, let's call it the highest vision or best outcome. Then you bring divine light into it. And that seems to kind of lock it in, to crystallize it, to make it real, to make it so. And go back again. Why not? Notice also how you feel about it. It's like, wow, this feels good, Ask it again. What's the best thing that can happen regarding my money situation or this upcoming situation with the bank or whatever it might be? What's the best thing that can happen? So what this is doing is activating your higher mind to give the answer, because your lower mind is usually running the show, which will give you your WCS or worst case scenario, what you're used to. But we don't want more of what you're used to unless you're used to obviously extraordinary things. So we want to activate the higher parts of the mind by asking the best possible questions. And then we bring divine light into it. And that kind of raises the vibration even further. And the more you do this, the more you will start to embody and integrate this highest vision within yourself. The idea being that when you build up the vision, these pictures, and the way it feels, which is very important, in yourself, you start to carry this new world within you. So you're kind of birthing new worlds by accessing and activating the best things. So just to recap, you're building up the inner world first about a situation so that before long, sometimes immediately the outer conforms to that. the more you hold this frequency of that inner world first, aligning it with the frequency of, which means how it feels, to the best outcome, then the more it becomes your natural frequency regarding that situation, the better your outcome. So what we're doing here is taking it out of the hands of your ego, your conditioned mind, or what I call FDC, fears, doubt, concerns, into the hands of the higher self, which is BCS, best case scenario. Hopefully this makes sense. If it doesn't, send me an email. So what's the summary? Okay, so first of all, we need to know what the best outcome is. So what's the best thing that can possibly happen regarding ... Let the answer come to you. Shine divine light into that answer. God is shining his perfect divine light into this now. Repeat the above steps until you feel phenomenal, until you can see the best outcome, you can feel it, you can experience it now, and then you keep bringing divine light in. And you become the walking embodiment now of that perfect vision. Before long, the outer will begin to conform to your inner world. Of course, at times you'll have what I call an anti-manifestation, which is the human side of you, your conditioning, the conditioned mind will arise, which I call the FDC. Fears, doubts, concerns. I'll give you a very quick example of this. So I was filling out a tax return about 2 years ago, realizing I had very little time to get it done. For some reason, I wasn't alerted to the fact that the end date was a week away, and I called my bank and I needed the sum of money I'd earned that past year, tax year, to put it into the online system to then work out my tax that I owed. Now, I called my bank up, I went to the branch, and they couldn't go that far back in my records. And it took awful, painstaking events and experiences for them to manage to kind of get the correct data I needed. It took about a week, and I just about submitted the form in time. A year later, the exact same problem I completely forget as the the final for that tax day, and this time I'd left even shorter distance, like 2 days I had to sort it out. And if you don't sort it out in time, you get very heavily penalized. And at the time, that was going to be a big problem for me. I didn't have that money ready to kind of pay this fine. So when I called the bank the year later, obviously with the memory of the previous year kind of fertile in me, I was ready for a bit of a fight on the phone, right? So your adrenaline's up, your blood is up. I had a lot of FDC, fears, doubts, and concerns, because I needed that. I need to know the sum of money I'd made in the previous tax year. And I knew that the bank weren't going to be able to do it, but I called them anyway. Had 2 days to get this thing sorted out. I called up and said, can you give me the sum of money I earned between X and Y? And she goes, you know what, son, I'm really sorry, but I don't think so. I'll check for you anyway, but I don't think we can go that far back in your records. We can only really go back 3 months. And of course, I could feel my blood boiling, and all the memories from last year were coming up, and I felt all this FDC, and I would, if I scored it, I'd probably say it's about 80 out of 100 FDC, fears, doubts, concerns. And I thought, oh, hang on a minute, some higher awareness then came out. Some higher awareness came through me, and I thought, oh wow, maybe I'm causing this. Maybe I'm somehow, the way I'm feeling is somehow making it not possible for me to have a great outcome here. And so I began to clear my FDC. I brought it down from an 80 to, let's say a 30 or a 20. And as I did say, she goes, oh, hang on a minute, Mr. Sainsbury. Let me just speak to my line manager. Let me see if he can help. I thought, wow, something's happening here. So I brought it. I thought, okay, I've got about a minute left, probably before she comes back. I'm going to see if I can get it down to 0. I got it down to about 5 out of 100. And by then, I didn't care, because I felt so good. I was like, you know what, I'm done. It doesn't really matter, does it? And I went into something called blissful insouciance, which is, blissful to simply not caring. And she goes, wow, we found a way to do it. We can't quite go back all the way, but we can go back all the way minus about 3 days, if that's okay for you, plus about 3 days, if that's okay with you. And I went, yeah, that's fine, just give me that sum of money. And yeah, so there it was. So I somehow was able to re-engineer a whole bank protocol. Maybe I'm overstating this, but it was a worthwhile lesson in lessening my FDC to get a better outcome. So the way to do that, the technique I taught you right at the beginning. You notice the fear, the doubt, the concern. There's a feeling in the body. No more than that. It's just a feeling in the body, which we then create such massive drama and projection in the mind. Don't let it get as far as the drama projection in the mind. It's just no point. Bring it back into the body, into the feeling, and say to that feeling, God is shining his perfect in my light now. Do that and notice how it reduces, repeat. Keep going until it's gone. So, to summarize, your entire inner world needs to be entirely positioned in favor of what you most want in terms of an outcome, a situation, deleting everything else, which means the FDC. So now I'm going to move on to my offer to you today. So I want you to take a deep breath. Just notice when you take a deep breath, just notice the in-breath coming into the heart center. So you're just breathing into the heart. Letting the in-breath come into the heart a few times. As you do so, you'll just notice you're getting nice and clear and clean. I have a question for you, and just let the answer arise in you. What is your number one challenge in your life? What is your biggest challenge in your life? Just notice what comes up for you right now. What is that one thing that if you were able to resolve or heal or clear, you'd gain immense freedom and happiness? What is that one thing? Okay, so write that down. What would be the value to you if you and I together were able to heal this, to clear it, to resolve it? What would be the value to you? Okay, write that down. Third question, what's the very best thing that can happen when you resolve this with me? What's the best thing that can happen once this is resolved? So my offer to you, to anyone listening to this webinar, is you're very welcome to schedule a call with me, which is free of charge, using that link, calendly.com/Dan Sainsbury -healing. Make a note of that. Book there. It's 1 hour. It's complimentary, and it will give us an opportunity to look at this number one challenge. We can also look at perhaps what's causing it, and then we'd look at how to resolve it. And that's my offer to you today. And this is complimentary until December the 19th this year, 2016. Okay, well, I hope you very much enjoyed this webinar, and I'll speak to you very soon. Thank you.